Welcome to our Going Green podcast. Today we're going to have a look at the idea of going green for the Queen. This is the year of our Queen's Platinum Jubilee, celebrating 70 years of being a monarch on the throne. And that came into being on the 6th of February of this year. Now, in fact, I can go back remembering some of these. Unlike my little boy, Paul, I can remember the Silver Jubilee in 1977, and I was at university at that time, and I had an exam the next day, and we were given a day off for the Jubilee. And what did I spend all that time doing? Everyone else was doing street parties and having a lot of fun, and what did I do? I was revising for my exams because I had them the next day.
Yeah, well,
that's just the way it goes. But I've also gone through the Golden Jubilee in 2002, the Diamond Jubilee in 2012.
Yeah.
And now we've got this one coming up, which is sort of a fantastic thing to do. And the Queen's sort of done a little bit about going green here. She's decided to sort of have a plant a tree for the Jubilee. And that took place really from October till now, really, because that's the best time to plant trees.
Yeah, but it's also going on in next October as well. So technically it's two tree planting seasons, because obviously they only take place during winter time. So, obviously because trees don't grow then, so good opportunity to move them, plant them, do those things. So it has been extended from last year, from October to March, till next October to March. So there is time to get involved and do all these things and go out and plant a tree.
So if you haven't planted a tree, then you've got an opportunity to either do that, or there are all sorts of projects you can join and donate to help plant a tree, and you can sort of make donations for that to plant yourself a tree. And that's good. This idea of this green canopy. Why are trees good? They are basically great big CO2 sort of sucking up factories, and they will take up all the extra CO2 that we've got, and they will turn them into wood. And then we can use that wood productively, and that's, if we use it, that's sort of being fairly carbon neutral. But if we can plant more and more trees, then that's great. And a lot of people don't seem to realise how many trees you need to plant.
Well, no, yeah, they talk about huge numbers, but not only do the trees do, it's also helping to, say, rewild some of the rural lands. It's also trying to help those biodiversity and ecosystems in those areas where there's lacking, which is hopefully helping, because the trees will hopefully help do. There's all sorts of things like trees help prevent floodlands, or help prevent floods in floodlands, shall we say, by helping to retain lots of walls. They prevent landslides, all sorts of things that they do, which is quite a fabulous job for them. So, it's one of those things where they're not just there just to be managed for later down the line. They're also there for more sustainable reasons, to make sure that we have habitats, we have all these things left once, when things move on.
Well, we've lost quite a lot of woodland over the years, and starting to sort of put it back is a jolly good idea, really. We can sort of increase sort of copse and little woodlands, as you said, for biodiversity purposes, for agricultural purposes as well, because they often act as little windbreaks for sort of fields, so that they have other useful jobs as well as sort of anything else. And I feel it's not just planting a tree that helps, but it's encouraging planting things like hedges. We've seen a lot of hedges disappear over the years, and now there's a move to try and put a lot more hedges back. A lot of farmers now are sort of looking after their hedges a lot more. There was a time when they ripped them out and they sort of made bigger fields. But now what they tend to do is leave the hedgerows where they are, and some of them have got quite big trees growing in them as well. And they don't plough right up to the hedge. They leave this gap, and that's good for wildlife. And how does that help? Well, if you've got some sort of insects there, they may be predators for these harmful things that are affecting your crops. And it may encourage more birds to live in the hedgerows, and the birds are going to go along and eat these insects that are damaging your crops. There's not that many of these birds are actually going to eat the seeds, because usually we get in first. Although a lot of these hedgerows have rather good things in there. I've noticed sort of blackberries, which is some of our favourites, and the birds eat those, so they do benefit in that way.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things where, yes, the hedgerows are beneficial to everyone. They're trying to increase them. It's like sort of other things that the Royals are trying to do. There was a public campaign about trying to get them to rewild royal wildlands, and the answer is that has actually come to fruition. There is major projects now, in doing so. There's the Prince Charles Duchy farm. He's basically trying to turn his farm, the state of these farms, into, I say from non-sustainable, that's the wrong way to put it, but makes them so there actually are, doing all these things. Like he's actually trying to demonstrate sort of, this is my farm, but this is the model farm. This is what people should be making their farms look like. This, rather than sort of, because he doesn't use the farm, or he actually maintains it, but he sort of, he can influence how it's run and demonstrates how it's used and sort of those. And it is those sort of ideas going from, I don't know much about things, to, here's the ideal farm. Here's what you should be doing, and here's help to actually get your farm to this state, or here's other things. There's a lot of money and investment that surrounds the Royals.
There's a lot of government money for most farmers, probably all farmers, to sort of rewild some of their land. If you've got a farm, you've got probably good bits of farm that are really good for crops or animals. You've also got those really awkward little bits that sort of you can't do too much with. You can't get a tractor down there and do much, so why not rewild it? And that all helps with more trees, more, animals, which then also help the whole ecosystem. So that's good. I like that. I like this idea of planting a tree, and improving hedgerows, improving farms, rewilding, and changing things for basically the better. Putting them back actually as they were, to be quite honest.
Well, yes. Well, this is the whole thing about the project, about the Earthshot project. They've been, Prince William is doing up, is to help sort of use some of their, resources, but use their ability to actually fundraise, to actually help projects that are actually making a difference. We did a podcast a while ago talking about the different people about the Earthshots, and sort of it's one of those things where him doing that is sort of great, but he actually found some people, got the money, and then actually invested it into their projects, and they're actually now making a difference. It's one of those things where they've got a terrific amount of influence, which but they're actually using that influence to not change people's minds. That's the wrong way to put it. But actually saying, these issues are important to us and everybody else. Therefore, they should be raised attention. They should be seen. They should be. People should worry about these things. Looked at these things. I bring lots of media there, for the media starts talking about all the stuff they do, and suddenly we're all talking about going green and climate. It's one of those fulfilling circles. The more they do climate change stuff, the more people know about climate change. Therefore, more people act on it. It's great. It's those sort of how things operate, and it's one of those things where you can't say they're not doing enough of that.
Yeah. So it's nice to see money being spent in those projects becoming more popular, but those projects are actually still going on, and new ones are taking place, and sort of people are getting new ideas about how to do things to improve how things are going green. There's something else I want to think about here, though. Going green for the Queen isn't just about, though, this green canopy. I think one of the other things is it's not just about the monarchy being green, but perhaps the whole country going a little bit more green. And perhaps one of the things we ought to talk about and think about is, what can you do for this Platinum Jubilee? What can you do about going a little bit greener?
Wow. There's all sorts of things and projects going on, sort of, we got released our local, like I said, council. I think it was county letter.
Yeah.
Newsletter.
It was county, yeah.
About sort of them going green and what they're doing and sort of what projects they've got on. And it is sort of, taking that time, if you, to do something, yes, there are all these projects sort of like the plants and trees, but let's say, what if you go and volunteer at one of your local conservatories? We've got one around the corner. They look after, they maintain a bit of rural land and make sure it's sort of a bit wild in that effect. But, some people are going to maintain it. Occasionally cuts the hedge, although, those sorts of things and activities. And so it is getting involved in these projects and things that are happening, and sort of, networking to say, well, let's do something. Let's build, like I say, plant a new forest. Let's put some woodland down here. Let's not just place a random tree elsewhere. Let's play, let's say the community builds a woodland, those sorts of projects, But it's other things like sort of looking at coastal areas. Coastal areas not particularly well suited to growing trees, but there is lots of maritime projects, sort of,
seagrass.
There is a seagrass, all those things. But I'm talking about sort of cleaning the beaches, those sorts of things. There are lots of projects, I say green projects, but there are lots of projects to do these sorts of things.
But it doesn't have to be a project, does it? Let's suppose you want to get fit, and to do that you decide, right, I'm going to go to the gym. But there's an alternative. What you could do is go for a walk in the countryside. And what you do with yourself when you go take a little walk in the countryside is you take a bin bag with you. And as you go along, you see how much rubbish you can collect. And in fact, if you take the kids with you, they seem to actually like going round, and they're quite proud that they've actually cleared some of these bits and pieces. You go to the beach, and what you do is you take a bin bag. And not only do you pick up all your rubbish, but you sort of reward yourself by picking up a lot of other rubbish and taking that and sort of taking it home with you and getting that either recycled or sort of, put in landfill. But it's taking it from the countryside and putting it into a big hole, basically, is better than sort of having it all spread around. Especially going in the sea, you can find lots of bits of plastic and things. You can just sort of pick them up rather than just saying, oh, that doesn't look very nice. Do something about it. Just take a bag, pick the stuff up, take it home with you. Generally, you normally have more space when you go home than when you go there, because I find when you go out for somewhere, you go out for a picnic, you take sort of all the food, you've eaten that, and then you've got space to bring back some rubbish. And I've noticed that one person goes out and they pick some rubbish up, and then you see more people going out picking rubbish up. And you notice that after a while, some of these places start to really look an awful lot better. And rather than looking at something and think, oh, that's awful, it's up to you to do something about it. So rather than going to the gym, you could go for a walk and pick up rubbish. And you've got fitter and you've helped the environment. That's good, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I'm not. It's one of those things where we might go and do that for this summer, or go somewhere and do that. We never know. It depends on what's the state of play of things. Are we going to have a gorgeous summer, but once again in lockdown, or are we going to have a nice, cold, wet and windy one where there's no point really going outside? So welcome to the British.
Well, that brings about the idea of going on holiday. Do you go on holiday abroad where you're guaranteed sort of sunshine and oh dear, the airfares have gone up because of the fuel prices, haven't they? Or do you stay at home? And we've noticed how much prices have gone up of holidays in this country because more people are staying at home. But that, in many respects, is good, because if you're not flying to XYZ, we won't put in any particular country, then you are saving that airfare. I know it's particularly difficult if you want to go perhaps on ferries and that at the moment. But that's another story. But you can, if you stay in this country, think, well, yeah, I have done my bit. I have done my bit of trying to save sort of greenhouse gases. So that can be useful to sort of stay in this country.
Well, yeah. Well, this next point I'm going to make is the unfortunate problems of being international celebrities. The royal family, they go on trips, but they do all these lovely tours and things. They go out to the Commonwealth and they talk about things. And did you know that unfortunately the royal family produces 18 times more CO2, or about 18 times more CO2 than the average family, unfortunately? And the majority of that, unfortunately, is airfares.
Yeah. But you see, I don't go out to the Caribbean to do a goodwill tour at the moment. If I did, go out to the Caribbean, my idea of going out to the Caribbean wouldn't be to actually do some work out there and sort of fly the flag. My idea would be sitting on the beach. But although they do use aircraft, they do use all that stuff, you've got to offset that by, if they didn't do that, how much good would have been done and how much change might have not taken place. So you've got to think of that in sort of two ways. You have to say, yes, the royal family went out to, and they used up all this greenhouse gases.
Yeah. And admittedly, their things like aviation fuel will be getting greener and cleaner. So it's one of those things where, unfortunately, they're having to use the aviation fuel that currently there is. So obviously, there's that major problem. But that's anybody if you go fly abroad anyway. So that's none the wiser that way.
Yeah. So you're thinking here of royal family doing things. What else can we do? And it relates all the time. So traveling. How about a car? Right? Can you use your car less? Fuel prices are going up terrifically at the moment. So can you sort of save? Is it better to perhaps use public transport? Can you use public transport? The other one is that, I look at my car, and I'm looking at my car, and my car's not being used as much. Now, this is good, because I'm not spending as much fuel. But then I get to the point where I'm saying, do I need a car? For the times when I'm going to have a car, could I actually sort of rent one, hire one, car share one? And there are all sorts of projects of different types where I can sort of not have a car, but I can just have a car for when I need it. And might that become a more economical route for me to try and do this?
Well, yes, there are these ways around sort of the issue of cars. It's one of those things where I was reading an article that talked about sort of how do you move people. They said a train carriage, of four. So if a train made of 4 carriages,
Yeah, get it right. Yeah.
Get the map right. The same amount of people can be transported in, or shuttled in that than in 15 buses, or approximately, because you've got to remember it's not quite right, because it's everybody's in one car, so we'll glance over that, or 150 cars. Yeah, and you sort of say, well, there is this idea that sort of the public transport doesn't look right, but it actually works in a way that it's the more efficient usage of moving people.
Yeah, the train might use more fuel than a car, but then
Per person,
when you do it as per person, it really is quite economical, and it's faster. And we're going into London later this week for our annual trip. Although we're actually doing 2 annual trips this year, so that's a bit daft, but still. We're going in, and why are we going in that way? It's going to be faster. It's going to be easier. I can sit and I can relax. Yeah, Paul will talk to me later about my idea of relaxing on the train.
Yeah, it doesn't happen, but we'll glance over that.
I'm all right as long as I'm driving. I just don't like or trust anybody else driving for me. And you should see what I'm like in a plane.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. I'm the one that has to sit next to the air stewardess.
Yeah, he gets in trouble. Anyway, that's beside the point.
But what we're talking about here is it is more efficient to use trains, more efficient to use buses, or it's even still more efficient if you get on your bike or you walk.
Yeah, and you sort of say, these are all these methods of transport, which is one of those things to say and do. But it's one of those critical things where they're not trying to remove the car. They're just different ways of, mass transport. If lots of people going to one place, then, you can do that. Whereas, unfortunately, if you're sort of going to lots of different places, it's sort of, the car is not the end or not being trying to be removed. This is the massive cry that people say, sort of public transport, you're getting rid of my car. No, the answer is not. It's just if you've got a lot of people moving, then it's easier to do it and more cheaper and more efficient to move it in a mass transit way than a sort of a car. Because you also got to remember, a train has a small depot, it has a small footprint compared to the space required to park these 150 cars.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's dumb things like that.
And as soon as you have an 8-carriage train, your quid's in there. Now, I was looking back at this Queen and her life, and she started off sort of just after the wartime. And in the wartime, we were looking at people being fitter and healthier than they probably are now, eating a lot less foreign foods. There was the land army, growing your own, all this sort of idea. And do you think we can bring that back now?
Well, the answer is there's lots of things going forwards. We've when the land army was around, there wasn't actually that much, I say, domestic food, or more precisely foreign food around, because no one was really sharing their country stuff.
Yeah, well, there was a war that stopped things being moved, and now we're looking at another problem, that the ships are starting to have a lot of problems moving around. It costs a lot to move them around. If I want fresh strawberries, I can have fresh strawberries all times of the year because they get shipped in. But when I have I've been unkind. When I have a foreign strawberry, often it doesn't taste as good as a good old English strawberry. And I think that's something to do with the transporting and perhaps the variety that are grown as well. But I do find they're better, and perhaps homegrown are even sweeter.
Well, yeah, we grow strawberries like an absolute, I say plague. They just take over the garden. But no, it's one of those things where they always say, the fresher things are, the better they taste. And so if you can go to get the supermarkets, if they can gather all the food produced local from nearby farms and get them into the supermarket, your local supermarket, as opposed to a bit more further afield, that is generally because they don't need to use as much preservatives or chemicals, because they don't need, they're coming from very local, they're picked up in the morning and they're on the shelves in the afternoon and they're sold by the evening, essentially. So they don't need to have all these, there you go, all these lovely chemicals pushing through. So it's one of those things where it is this idea of making sure that things, I wouldn't say local, but things are quite, I wouldn't say better, but they're
I think they are fresher. A couple of years ago, we grew our own potatoes, didn't we? And we had some new potatoes, and we dug them up. We then washed them, and then we rubbed them to sort of remove some of the skin. We then boiled them, and we ate them, and they were sort of in our stomachs within sort of probably an hour of actually picking them. And they were gorgeous. And it's much better trying to do that. And I felt a lot better doing that, eating those. I really enjoyed them because, well, I'd grown them. And I like growing things like runner beans for your mother. I don't like runner beans, but her only complaint is that she doesn't get any runner beans, and then suddenly she gets tons of the blooming things to try and eat.
Well, yes, well, because that's the harvest, you see. That's the point about, we've grown them and we harvest them, and then that's sort of what the period of time is we've got them all. Sort of basically what we need to do is sort of supply them out. Don't grow enough, if that makes sense, to do a whole year's worth of supply. But, if you had, say, you go out to an allotment, you could grow quite a lot.
Yeah, and it's whether people have got time to do that. But going out to an allotment is actually good for you. You say, well, how's that good for you? Well, you've got to do some digging, and it's cheaper to go and dig your allotment than it is to go to the gym. And you can sort of dig the allotment, and you can plant your plants, and then you can eat them. And that is sort of a wonderful thing, but it does take time. And time is a thing that people don't seem to have these days. And so perhaps going green for the Queen, one of the things we have to think about is, can you make a simple lifestyle change? Could you just give yourself a little bit more time? Could you give yourself a little bit more you time to get fitter, going walking? Could you have a little bit more time, have an allotment? And you say, oh yeah, well, I've got to spend the time with the kids. Well, I've got some friends that they've got an allotment, they take the kids with them, and the kids are loving it. And they've got their own little bit that they're growing, and they get a terrific kick out of growing their own plants. And then you're going to say to me, yeah, well, my kids are teenagers, and I couldn't do that with my teenagers. And I'm saying, well, yeah, but these friends I've got, they do have teenagers, and it's the teenagers that are raving because they were started young, and they are now changing their lifestyle to sort of be better. Well, that's this for this Going Green podcast. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll be back next week with another podcast on Going Green. Until then, it's goodbye from me.
And a goodbye from me.
Goodbye.